Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport, where it seems you can't have a night out in Morecambe without the tabloids catching on and without the whole boxing world talking about it. Just to warn you guys, my voice is a bit off just because I've sort of had a lighter version of whatever this flu thing is that's been going around. I don't even know if it's flu. I think it's what happens when you just go into environments you're not used to. Look, one thing COVID has done to all of us is it's shredded our immune system. Like, we're just not around each other enough to get that diversity of pathogens and to strengthen our immune system. Like, from a public health perspective, the government have to fix this. I'd almost have a period of 3 months where we made everyone go into the office just for 3 months in order to do this, because there must be an impact on the NHS of all of this stuff happening, and it's got to be affecting the elderly too. But that's a side issue, conversation for another time. Let's just zero in on what we're here to talk about. Now, I've tried not to read too much of what's been happening for a number of reasons, but mainly because a former heavyweight champion of the world, a millionaire, a man who has provided for his family many generations over, should be free to do what the hell he wants. He's kind of discharged his obligations as a man and as a boxer to the world. So if he wants to get blasted on a Saturday night, he should be allowed to. Now, the other reason I'd say is just, why do we care? I think there are a number of reasons why we care. And we care mainly because we don't know if this is what we'd like to think it is, which is a guy having an absolute blowout, or if this is the first step towards a destination we've been before with Tyson. We've been there with Tyson. So we know that these things can look innocent in isolation, but when you understand what's come before, then you're like, we just want to make sure he's okay here, right? So just to summarize, it seems that last weekend, Tyson Fury's been out, right? Don't really know with who, don't really know why, how, when, but he's out. Friday night, it looked like he was in Strawberry Gardens in Morecambe. Seems a nice venue, nice pub garden. The local musicians come and play every so often. You know, if you're into your fruit ciders, it seems they've got the full house of fruit ciders. And the burger menu looks really good. So if you are in Morecambe, Strawberry Gardens might be the place to chill out if the weather's nice. And so he has a night there, and to all intents and purposes, it's fine. Feedback is he's just a normal bloke, took photos, gave a girl 20 quid, or usual sort of good news story that Fury tends to get involved with locally. The thing that seems to have caught the tabloid's attention is the day after. Now, seemingly Friday was quite tame because Saturday definitely wasn't. So there's a video, and it's widely circulating on social media. If you need to find it, just jump on Twitter, you'll find it. And you can see Fury's just absolutely blasted. That's the only word for it. That's blasted. That's Freshers Week blasted. That is, I'm going to drink my student loan in a week. Blasted. Like, he's barely stood up at one point, and then as the kind of story evolves, you just see him outside on his hands and knees, just blasted. And like, who hasn't been there before? It doesn't seem he was sick though, so kudos to him for being able to hold it together like that. But that Sunday must have been so rough. But it was standard Fury, loud shirt, gilet, kind of bland trousers. And yeah, he was just out, it looked like. And if that was anybody else, you'd be texting him going, hey, how was last night? That looked crazy. But because it's Tyson Fury, and deep down a lot of people care about him. And from a distance, I kind of care as well. I don't know him personally like that. I've met him a couple of times, but I don't know him personally. But if you remember after the Usyk fight, I posed that question, how is he going to cope with the loss? You know, because remember, after the biggest win of his life, he struggled. So that was the biggest moment in his life up until that point, from a sporting perspective, a career perspective. And so here we are again at the biggest moment in this man's career. And it hasn't gone his way. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worth it? Well, only time will tell. But I can outline the reasons why, just from a boxing coach perspective, I would be on the phone to Tyson just saying, listen, what's going on? Number one, he's 36 this month, right? I think Fury's 36 this month. So getting that body into peak physical condition is going to get harder and harder every month. So nights like this definitely need to be planned. You can't just do it because there'll be knock-on effects if you need to be doing some runs to tick over. All these sorts of things count, by the way. At that top level where the difference, look at the difference between Fury and Usyk. It was literally a knockdown, right? It was a knockdown. Maybe one or two punches in a 12-round fight. That's the margin you're dealing with at that top level. So everything has to be planned and factored in because there's not much difference between those guys at the top. So I look at that and I go, I'd want to know that was just a blowout. It was planned. It might have been Dave down the road's birthday and, Fury had promised as soon as he was done with Usyk, he'd pop down for a few, whatever. You can sleep easier then. If that wasn't planned, then you start going, oh God, what are we going to do? The other reason is we've been around this Fury circus for at least the last 6 years. Let's just look at it in that phase of his career, because there are probably 3 phases to Fury's career. But this is that kind of I don't want to say final act, but this is the third act. And we've seen all the cast of characters. His nutritionist, his strength and conditioning guy, his cousins, his brothers, his dad, his wife, his kid. We've seen everybody, right? But the red flag to me was the fact that I didn't recognize a damn person in that video apart from Tyson Fury. I did not recognize a single person in that video. And the kind of conspiratorial version of me is like, did he go out drinking on his own? And then whatever happened, happened. Which isn't a bad thing, by the way. Like, many great nights have started out that way. But it forced me to ask questions. So where are those people? Where are the entourage? After the defeat, where are the entourage making sure he's okay? Now, I know you can't babysit a grown man forever. But if you lived through the last situation, this is a time you should be paying attention. But then they've got families and commitments too. So how much can they really do it? But you'd want to feel like there were some familiar faces around him. And it didn't feel that way from that video, mainly because I didn't recognize the people. And it didn't seem that the newspaper did either. Like, there was no context given to the people around Fury. We have no idea if they were part of his party or if they were just guys who were helping out the kindness of their hearts. We have no idea. But I'm always worried when I see someone that famous in unfamiliar company. So that was another reason where I had some concerns. The other thing was, if you're telling me that these guys are going to fight in 6 months and 1 week's time, and Fury has to find another level, because he does have to find another level, by the way. To beat Usyk, he has to find another level and a completely different tactical plan. We'll come on to that later, maybe. But he has to find a completely different level. So the work for that, I'm not saying the camp for that, but the work for that will probably start in about July, August. Right? Because you've got to look at, right, what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we need to improve on, and then plan the camp accordingly. So that's got to start happening pretty soon. That means Tyson's got to lock in pretty soon. But if this is the first we're seeing of him out and about, are we going to see another situation like we did, was it the last Euros? No, probably the Euros before that, when he was in Marseille buying Jaeger bombs for everyone. That's the worry. But, that deadline of the 21st will be on us pretty soon, which is why I said I don't see him fighting. I just don't. And if Fury's kind of done with the game, fair enough, man. Go out there and have a blowout, have a good time, but don't let your proclivities override your discipline but this is true for everyone, man. Don't let the negative ever override your discipline. As long as you do things within the tolerance of your discipline and the tolerance of your commitments, you're normally okay at life. But you know what? When I saw that video, I went back to, there's an article that Donald McRae's done Is it Donald or Donald? But the guy that writes about boxing. And it's got to be like 2010, 2011. I can't remember. But I went back to that article. And Tyson said something really interesting. And he said, they told me having your first kid would be an amazing experience. And to me, it wasn't. I'm paraphrasing here, so work with me. He said, I was told that winning the British title would be one of the greatest moments in my life. It wasn't. And he said, I never feel like anything I achieve is good enough. I never feel like anything I achieve makes me happy. These are the things he was saying in the interview. And he said, one day I could be happy as Larry, and the next day I could be, in a space where I want to just smash up the whole place. So there's a whole chunk of this discussion where Fury just lets on that he swings between the poles of being super happy and super down, right? And he's talking about it very matter of fact, where he said, this is something I'm going to have to carry for the rest of my life. And he's like, I know that at some point when I taste defeat, the demons are going to consume me. And as much as we buy into all of this Tyson Fury is that, he's a very, very sharp guy. He's a very smart guy. You don't have the career he had unless you have something about you. And remember, he's giving this interview around the time when his dad is on a case. His dad is on a case for, gouging someone's eye out? Like, was it Othie Sykes was the guy, wasn't it? And so he's really going through it at this point. But this is that kind of Fury phase when he wasn't who he became. So this was the phase where most people weren't convinced by Tyson Fury. So this is a time where him saying anything didn't have any greater significance. He was just a boxer speaking honestly. But when he talked about how he struggles with that mental health side of things and, the struggle to find happiness, he then pivoted very quickly to saying, the only time I don't have these problems is when I'm in a boxing ring. He said, come fight night, everything makes perfect sense to me. I don't think about anything negative. This is the place where I'm most calm, most peaceful. And he's like, this feels like home to me. And it was just overall really interesting insight into him and why he needs boxing and the structure it gives him. And when I heard that, it took me back to my coaching mindset and why it was always important to be around guys and women after they've lost. Because for boxers, especially boxers at a certain level, fighting is part of their identity. I've said it on here many times. They're either running towards something or they're running away from something. And so when they lose, that's a knock on their identity. And it's about whether they can get back on that horse and accept it happened, but they can change it, or whether that starts to consume them and then it can become negative. And I've seen that happen with boxers where that one defeat sets off a chain of events that they struggle to recover from and then have to rebuild a completely different identity. It's not unusual. And then I also think back to Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton had a whole career being built around, he was just a normal bloke. That was the guy you saw at the pub all the time. And then it turns out he was never happy doing that. He felt pressure to do that because he'd created that brand and that identity, but he never liked doing that. And these are the things that make you not worry, but you're like, okay, just make sure Tyson Fury's got the right people wrapped around him. And just like I said with Ryan Garcia, we've all been there. These lives of excess only lead to one place, man, because you're trying to fill a hole. And it's a hole that doesn't want to be filled. And it's probably a hole you can't fill. And you keep chasing it. And the only thing you can ever do in life is pivot to something else, find new purpose. And I hope Fury does that. Because he is. As weird as he is, he's a national treasure. But this whole thing has had me thinking about Tyson in the broader sense. Now, you see, all of this leads us to a point, and the point will be this. About 6 years from now, Tyson Fury will be on that ballot for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And my question is, will he get in? Would he get in as a first ballot guy? Would he get in as a second ballot guy? Yes, it depends on who else retires next year. And, there probably won't be many shining lights in terms of that. But when you look at Fury's career, is it a Hall of Fame career? And you can break his career down into three big chunks, right? There's the bit that stops at Kevin Kingpin Johnson. There's a bit that stops at Vladimir Klitschko. And then there's the bit we've got now, right? And what I love about those 3 points in his career is there were always warnings. There were warnings that he wasn't, how can I put it? This is tricky because he is good, but he wasn't disciplined. Right? There were warnings. You can look at, in the first chunk of his career, Nevin Package dropped him heavy as well, with a right hand, with a dipping right hand. In the second phase, Steve Cunningham did the same thing, dipping right hand. In the third phase, it was Deontay Wilder with another right hand. And all of these times, Fury's been warned because I always think greatness is about doing great things. Fury kept his left hand low, but never mitigated the risk that it would bring. And that will be a theme throughout his whole career. The other theme throughout his whole career is he didn't like fighters that were busy. Look at the people he struggled against. He struggled against Package till he stopped him, struggled against Cunningham till he stopped him, struggled against Wallin, struggled against Usyk. That pace and work rate was his kryptonite. And you look at that first phase in his career, and the first John McDermott fight will kind of be the one thing that counts against him in all of that. But there's nothing spectacular in that first phase, is there? He beat Chisora, but that's all much of a muchness at that level. Went the distance with Kevin Johnson when everyone was going the distance with Kevin Johnson. So it's kind of, first phase is par. That second phase, I think he was unlucky because that was when he was meant to fight David Haye. And I just don't think David's body was willing to play ball at that point in his career. And so he ended up having to fight guys like Cunningham, I think it's like Joey Abel, Christian Hammer, etc., until he fought Vlad. And even when you watch that Klitschko fight back, you go, I think if they'd fought 2 years earlier, Vlad would have stopped him. But at that point, Vlad was old. He was tired. He was a man that needed a break. And I think he suffered from the fact that Fury had more time to study him than he had time to study Fury. And so Fury was able to jump in and sort of step away. And look, give Peter Fury his credit because he gave Fury something that had been lacking in the first phase, which was defensive solidity. Yes, people said he was boring, and we forget this, right? We forget up until Klitschko, the general consensus in boxing was Fury's boring. And then if you look at the first phase of Fury's career, it's all documented. People weren't sure how far he would go. People in the media, the people who are paid to blow smoke, were telling you Fury was the next great British heavyweight, but they said the same about David Price too, didn't they? And they say the same about everyone that they're paid to say it about. But if you look at where the fans were at, if you look at those go back in the archives of the forums, like Seconds Out and all of that, people weren't convinced by Fury because they saw the same flaws we all did back then. Left hand low, feet weren't as quick as they should be. Like a lot of the stuff you're told about Fury now is just marketing. Like he was slow and wasn't defensively solid. When he got touched, he went over. There were all of these things like you could hurt Fury, but he had character, and he's had that from day one. But if we just sort of spin it back to the Vlad, so by the time he's fought Vlad, and he's conquered his mountain, he's won all the belts apart from the WBC. Now people start to take him serious and go, right, now your career can kick on. We've had the David Haye nonsense, and then that kind of Once David had disappeared, there was no one really to fight apart from Vitaly and Vlad, and you managed to get Vlad. And then we know what happened after that. The demon surfaced, and we lost Fury for 2.5 years. And then if you look at the third phase in his career, it's been trash, Wilder, White, Chisora, Usyk. Hard to build a Hall of Fame career on that, because you never see Fury continuously climb a mountain. And that may be his doing, that may not be his doing, I don't know. But we didn't get a run that went Wilder, Joshua, Usyk, or Wilder, Usyk, Joshua. We never got that run. And that's what counts against him when you start to talk about the greats. Whereas Usyk went, listen, I'm coming for all the belts. At heavyweight, I'm going to have a couple of warm-ups, then it's just belts. It's belts and it's hard fights. And that's why if they retired in the same year, Usyk would get in the Hall of Fame before Tyson Fury. And I said all of that to make this very important point. Everything I just told you will be what Tyson Fury knows in his own heart. He will know in his own heart that he's taken the easiest possible route to winning all the available belts. He's taken the easiest possible route he could have in his career. And why is that? And I'll go back to this. When people fight and fight at a high level, they're running away from something when they're running towards something. And I'll go back to that 2011 interview. We were given no idea what Tyson Fury was running towards, but we got a good idea what he was running away from. I think if you watch a lot of the Fury interviews between 2010 and 2012, you find out pretty quick what he was running away from. So an interesting thing that came out was from his wife, actually, Paris Fury, and she said, there is a history of depression in the Fury family. To which Tyson added, me and my brothers are all the same. But when we see each other, we pretend it's not the case. And he made reference to his parents fighting, his dad womanizing, his mum being pregnant multiple times, but only coming up with 4 siblings. All these sorts of things. And I'm not revealing any secrets here that he didn't reveal. But there's a load of stuff that he went through in his life that you can understand why, you might have a few demons in your closet. And one of the other things he said, and this might have been in a different interview, and this was interesting. He said, I always had to prove my dad wrong. My dad would tell me that I'd never be an amateur boxer, so I had to show him that I could be. And he's like, that's why I did it. I wanted to prove I could do it, and I wanted to prove I could do it better than him. And as I said earlier, you're either running away from something or running towards something. And you look at how Tyson came up, and not much gets talked about it now because obviously it's more curated and they try and manage the story. But that interview where you heard about what the family life was like for Tyson, which Paris seemed to know all about, and then the history of depression in the family. Now you start to have a bit more empathy with Tyson and go, this can't be easy for him. Because I don't believe he wants to be undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. I don't, really. I think he gets in a boxing ring to compete. He gets in a boxing ring because that's the one time he doesn't have to think about his demons. All the other stuff is for the public. I don't believe he wants to be undisputed more than Usyk does. I think their drivers are completely different. Now, let me illustrate my point like this. Fury went from potentially, people forget, when Tyson first started out, the plan was to go with the McGuigans. Well, Barry, should we say. And all that stopped Fury being a McGuigan fighter was essentially Barry had no license. So Barry was selling him a dream. And there are other people in boxing who do this. They say, I'll manage you. Then it turns out they don't have a license. Barry did not have a license. So then Hennessy could step in and go, no, I'll take care of all of it. And so that's how Fury did it. Hennessy had terrestrial TV. And so Fury jumped on that. And this often gets forgotten that Barry was meant to be Tyson's first manager. And then you go through the list of trainers. He had Steve Egan to begin with. That didn't work out because it's quite hard to go from amateur to pro with your trainer unless your trainer's constantly evolving and bringing new things in. But sometimes the voice gets tired, and Fury had known him since he was 14. So I can get why that wouldn't work. So you had him. Then you had Uncle Huey, God rest his soul. And that was an on-off relationship. His dad would be involved to varying degrees. McCracken was involved for a bit. Emmanuel Stewart was involved for a bit. There was a Canadian guy that was involved for a bit. And this was all in his first 5 years as a pro. Remember, this is the fighting man from a boxing family, steeped in boxing history, all that sort of stuff. And he's hopping between trainers in his key development phase. And this is why, actually, if you look at Tyson, he does a lot of things bad. A lot of the stuff that was bad in the beginning is bad now. The low left hand is still there. The low left hand is still there. The slow back leg is still there. He's got away with a lot because he was big. Had he been a smaller heavyweight, 6'4", 6'5", with that set of skills, his career would be a wrap by now. We wouldn't be talking about him. But being 6'7", 6'8", wherever he is, has its advantages. But first 5 years of his career is chaos from a training perspective. It's only when Peter came in and just brought structure, order, box to instructions. You're going to do what I tell you to do. Then the Tyson Fury that we talk about now started to emerge. And then once he separated from Peter again, we never got that Tyson Fury. The guy that kept all bases covered. The guy who boxed to win first, entertained second. We never got that. And you wonder what Tyson would have done against Usyk with Peter in his corner. But let's go back to those first 5 years. Can you see the chaos? And one of the things I've learned coaching, because you deal with kids from dysfunctional backgrounds, and what you find is kids from dysfunctional homes crave dysfunction. So they go seeking dysfunction. This is why kids from messed up homes tend to do things like crime. And so I'm not saying it's deterministic, by the way, but generally there's a correlation. And my theory on it's always been, when you're from dysfunction, you seek dysfunction because it gives you comfort. At least you understand what it is. You may not enjoy it, but you understand it. And so when I look at Fury, I always wonder if he's seeking dysfunction. Is his career about seeking dysfunction, seeking a crisis, so he can overcome it? Because that's Fury's boxing career. Always had something to prove. There's always a point to prove. So had his first bout to show his dad that he could box. Then when they said that he couldn't be a champion, he said, okay, I'll show you. And then when GB wouldn't show him any love and respect, he went over to Ireland and did his thing. And then when the Irish said, right, you can't box for us in the Olympics, and gave him no reason, he said, well, forget all of this. I'm going to go and prove to you guys as a pro that I should have done. And that's why he targeted David Price. But he always sought that dysfunction. He always sought that tension, that conflict, so he could overcome it. Whereas you get some guys who just love boxing. They just want to test themselves. That doesn't make them better people. They're just different people. But Fury seeks dysfunction. And the thing about seeking dysfunction is it comes at a cost, because you're reliant on external energy sources for your own success. Whereas when it's internally driven, it's a lot easier to manage. And I guess that's why guys like Joshua and Usyk can outperform their capabilities, or can outperform what was expected of them, because it's internally driven. Whereas I think Fury needs that stuff outside to make him do what he does. And so coming back to it, seeking dysfunction. And then I want you to wrap up on the same point. Maybe what we saw on Saturday night was Tyson Fury being Tyson Fury, a man that will permanently seek dysfunction, just so he can bring order and success to it, just so he can win. Maybe that's all it was. Now, if it becomes a trend, that might be a worry. But I would say Tyson Fury's career is that, though, right? That first phase was chaos. Yeah. Didn't take it seriously, would drink, would party, didn't take boxing seriously. That's how he got dropped. And it was only under Peter Fury that he had to take it seriously. And you saw the difference. And I think in the third phase of his career, he regressed back to the original Tyson Fury. The only difference this time is he's got a whole load of yes men, with a boatload of yes men who are willing to bow to his every wish, tell him what he needs to hear, what he wants to hear, I should say. And so when I saw that video, I said, there's a man in his mid-30s who doesn't have the support network around him to protect him from himself. And I have a feeling that you're going to see more instances of Fury seeking dysfunction, because that's where he feels most comfortable. Where there's uncertainty, chaos, and dysfunction is where Fury feels most comfortable. I might be wrong on that, but that's the sense I get with Tyson. And he wouldn't be the only boxer who does that, by the way. He might be the tallest, but he wouldn't be the only boxer. My only hope is that was just him having a blowout, and that wasn't him reverting back to who he really is. But when you don't see friends and family around someone and they're that drunk, it's a worry. And on that note, I'll say take care and have a good day, guys.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.